If you don't have clair abilities and you want to be a death witch, is that possible? Yes, and you also don't have to be a medium to be a death witch either. Now, everybody has clair abilities. I want to make that clear. But a lot of people have them to the point where they're not developed enough to really be utilizing them in their everyday or even in their craft. But outside of having clair abilities and mediumship abilities, you can communicate with the dead using divination. You can also communicate with them using dreaming or meditations as well. So although it definitely is easier when you have clair abilities and you have mediumship abilities, it's definitely not impossible to communicate with them other ways. But I think another thing to keep in mind with death witchery is that death witchcraft is something where you are helping the dead, but you don't necessarily always need to be communicating with them. I do think it's helpful if you're able to, but I don't think it's super necessary depending on what you feel drawn to and what you don't. I think it depends on the death witch and what they're really drawn to in that practice. I do think that being comfortable with working with the dead and spirits, whether it is human spirits or spirits of beings, I have experienced those, it is pretty integral to be comfortable with working with the dead. So if it's something that you're not comfortable with, I wouldn't personally recommend you pursue death witchery, but I would recommend it if you are interested in working with the energy of death. Oftentimes people who get into death witchery, like myself, go into necromancy as well, like myself, because it just kind of makes sense. You start creating connections with the spirits who come through and they start assisting you with things. And so it's really common to kind of build that community of spirits. I sound like I run like a ghosty YMCA or something. But yeah, I do recommend at the very least having a way to communicate with them through divination or meditation or dreaming or really any method that you find works for you in your practice. That way you have a clear way of communicating with the dead, because that's really what you want in a death witchery practice. And of course, you're always going to be able to have the option of developing your clair abilities to the point to be able to utilize them as another additional way of connecting with the dead. Some other things that death witches can do if they feel called to them is grief counseling, if it calls to you. You can also volunteer or apply for jobs at funeral homes or memorial sites, graveyards, and cemeteries. Some people prefer to just walk through memorial sites and graveyards and kind of clean it up as they go through. Other people will help give roadkill proper burials, things like that.